So, esteemed viewers, about less than 24 hours ago, I rewatched Zack Snyder's 2013 film Man of Steel, and it's been a couple years at least. I don't know exactly. I can't remember how long it had been since I watched it, but I'd heard a lot about it in the time, a lot of criticism from different angles, its structure and its, weird use of 9/11 imagery. They didn't really talk about anything, stuff like the color grade being a problem. A lot of it was in Renegade Cuts series on the DCEU, his first video. I'll put a link to that in the description. Um, and but there's one thing that I have heard nobody else talk about, and something that there are two, like, no, there was more like three scenes that really resonated with me, that I kind of wanted to talk about today. So that's what this video is. And they're all related to the parts in set during Superman's childhood. So, the first scene is probably the one I have most to talk about, um, which is the scene where, so, I guess if you haven't seen the movie, the premise is that Superman is a teenager, he's young. He's in early adolescence, is what it's supposed to be, and he has this moment where he's like struggling with his powers. He's struggling with his he can't he can't he's like seeing through everybody, and he's hearing things beyond what normal humans would hear, and he's etc etc etc, and finally he has to just get up and run. He gets up and runs into a closet. And if you're not autistic, you might be wondering where I'm going with this. If you are autistic and you've seen the movie and you felt that, or if you haven't seen it, or if you're autistic, you probably know where this is going, because that's how a lot of sensory overload feels. Sometimes, like, I have a hard time filtering things. So my brain will be like trying to in some ways it feels like how they describe the reactor in Chernobyl, in HBO's Chernobyl, like, build up, like all the pressure's building, and I'm hearing all these things coming in, and I'm trying to process them all at once, and eventually you've got to press AZ5, of course, in this case, it doesn't actually end up causing the explosion. Spoilers for HBO's Chernobyl. You should still watch it if you haven't. That's not really the point of the whole, anyway. So that's off topic. Sorry. So the there's a lot of interesting, like, stuff that, like, it felt very, like, it felt true to my experience, like, he gets out and runs to a place, to a closet where he can just close the door and just, like, get it all out of his head, basically. And one of the interesting things that I noticed was that everybody, like, follows him. The teacher seems to follow him out of a legitimate sense of concern and worry. It doesn't seem like she understands what he's going through, but she can see that he's in distress and wants help, and a lot of the kids follow for, like, the spectacle of the he can hear them, although I don't think they know that he can hear them, but he can hear them talk about how much of a freak he is, to them, and the there's this part where the teacher goes for the handle of the door, and he heat visions the handle, and like not like seriously burns the teacher, but just like because he if you're looking at this through an autistic lens, he just wants to be left alone. He just wants to like have a minute to just again to de-stress, to let this all flow out, because it does flow out relatively quickly. But nobody understands that. And so it's actually like it was very affecting and very, it was like, hey, it was that scene that made me go, I should maybe talk about this. Maybe Superman is the closest we've gotten to an autistic superhero, which is something that I've been personally wanting for a while. And most of the movie unfortunately didn't, continue on that theme, which I was disappointed in, but not surprised in, because I did remember the movie and its plot. Sorry. So then the second scene I want to talk about is the scene that is right after the scene. So there's a scene previously where a school bus has a freak and very improbable accident. The visual language actually kind of felt to me like it was implying that Clark caused this school bus to go tumbling into the river, but I also don't think that's actually the case. Like, I think that's just a weird, because it doesn't make any, anyway, weird misuse of the Kuleshov effect. I'll put a link to Dan Olsen's video on that in the description as well. But then he, crashes, and of course, being Superman, he, and not being a heartless monster, he, like, pushes the school bus out of the water and saves people, and he saves the bully, who was also because again, he's not a heartless monster who is going to let someone die because they said mean things to him. So okay, and then so that's the premise. That's the setup, and then what I find interesting is, if you look at it through a normal lens, especially if you're not neurodivergent, there's a lot of, like, this scene is kind of stupid, and I do generally agree with the criticism of, like, the Jonathan's, I think that's, Earth Dad, where Earth Dad is like, you should be willing to let people die because they wouldn't understand you or whatever, and it's like, what? Like, I'm sorry? Should... Like, why would that, like, anyway, but the interesting thing is, that, there's this line where Clark is like, something's wrong, like, what's wrong with me? Did God do this to me? And again, Jesus stuff, which it gets painfully heavy-handed at times in Man of Steel, which is but what and the dad is the one who says, they always fear what they don't understand, which I think, in my personal experience, and I think a lot of autistic people don't have this experience, so this is just my personal experience, but I remember feeling like I was cursed in some way, like this was a bad thing, and like it took a couple of different, like, therapists to tell me, like, no, this isn't you necessarily, you're not the problem here, you're not the, you're like, there's good things about being autistic, and a lot of the bad things are just things that are very easy for society to deal with, and it just doesn't. They didn't say it, obviously, in those exact words, but they were the first, like, I had to be introduced to the idea that these things were a blessing, and not a curse, which is kind of messed up, and hopefully future generations of autistic people won't have to go through what I did. Um, but the so that and then there's a line that where he's like, I wish I could remember what it was because it was really interesting because the dad says like, one day you will be like one day you'll be grateful for this, and that almost felt like something that I would tell my past self, like one day you're gonna be grateful that you are autistic. Despite all the crap you have to go through, all the crap society puts you through, you still there's still these amazing things that come with it. Your brain just like works in really cool ways. And then it got me thinking about Randolph Bourne because he's an amazing and underrated thinker who everyone should read because he's cool and interesting. When he wrote it in an essay, for those who are unaware, he was a early 20th century social critic who got like I think it was tuberculosis when he was really like young and ended up physically handicapped. And he wrote a whole essay. He was a very early disability rights activist, and he talked about a lot of things that unfortunately are not solved more than a century after his death in 1918 from the Spanish flu. But anyway, so Randolph Bourne is like, he writes this essay and there's a whole bunch of quotes, and I've talked about him before, so again, apologies to my longtime esteemed viewers, but there's plenty of people might have not seen the other videos where I talked about him and stuff. So he wrote an essay called Handicapped, which is all about, his experience and what it was like, and I would highly recommend everybody go read it because it's very good, especially honestly if you are handicapped, because that is very anyway. Go read Handicapped, but there's this line in it, there's this quote in it, where he says that childhood is the worst time for him, and by him he means disabled people because he was writing in a time where him was generally used. And anyway, as a child, he is a stranger in a strange land, which I again like. That is kind of how I felt, and that's one reason why I'm very like skeptical or almost cynical in some ways about people's childhood nostalgia, because I personally am happier now that I'm an adult, now that I am more, I'm more comfortable with myself. I'm like, hey, I'm able to just be like, hey, I'm autistic, I'm proud of it, and you can take it or leave it. So yeah, and I love the like you're going to use these gifts to help humanity, and that's what I'm trying to do with my own unique brain, my own way of seeing the world. I want to help people of all backgrounds and walks of life and whatnot and identities. And okay, so I'm sorry. Even though if I can get past my self-esteem issues, which I've talked about elsewhere, and I'll talk about later, too. Why am I not Mary Shelley? For some reason, I want to be one of the Shelleys. Anyway, another topic for another day. Can you tell this isn't scripted? I have notes. I've got my notepad app open in front of me, and I'll put the notes in the description like I did in my Wonder Woman video. Okay, so the last thing I want to talk about before I kind of do a conclusion is there's this other scene that I was also very surprised at how much it affected me, where it's when Superman's an adult and he goes back to his mom and his Earth mom, and his Earth mom is like, oh, you I remember when you got here, you know, I remember watching you try and breathe because you had trouble breathing, and and that was like, obviously in text, you know, none of this. Just to be clear, I don't think that this isn't Superman is secretly autistic the whole time. This is more like Superman can be read through, if you read it through the lens of neurodivergent or autistic theory, then that can open you up to some new insights on in the text. And so the so even though it wasn't, you know, it was him adjusting to Earth's gravity in the universe, it also very much reminded me of something my mom has told me before, which is that when I was first born, I was like very I apparently had a lot of trouble sleeping, you know, like I would cry a lot and I would need to be like rocked, I think, until I fell asleep or something, you know, and that is admittedly, like, I've got less to talk about there, but that's just, I wanted to point out another instance where it felt true to my own autistic experience, or at least, I guess it would be true to my own, because she's telling her adult son, and my mom was also telling me as an adult, you know, about what we were like as babies, so, but anyway, um, okay, so 3 scenes, very small portion of the movie. And yet I've talked about these 3 scenes that I really liked in exclusion to a bunch of the movie, which I thought was much more hit and miss. Tonally, it was less grim than I remember, but it was certainly more grim than I would have liked, etc. But this is why this is the kind of takeaway I want to give, is that Superman is okay, sorry, not Superman. Man of Steel has been talked about to death in so many corners of the internet, in many good faith ways and bad faith ways, and from a lot of very valid angles. You know, I was kind of put off by, not put off. I don't know. I thought that some of the you know, looking at it through a feminist theory lens was a bit, you know, definitely not the worst budget movie I've seen. Jurassic World. But but other people have talked about those. You know, this is the classic YouTube trope of everyone's talking about this thing, but I'm going to point out this other thing. You know, but more to the point, I want to talk about like this very weird thing that I've noticed, that like there's this very weird lack of, you know, discussions of autistic, neurodivergent, you know, or whatever you want to call it, theory in terms of media. And, you know, like, I keep thinking about Philosophy Tube's video on the Q slur. I know that I probably can say it, but I'm not going to, because I don't want, I'm just hung up. But but one of the things he mentions is that a lot of those theorists were, you know, activists as well as, you know, writers. So they were you know, gay people or bi people or pansexual people or trans people or non-binary people, or, you know, et cetera, who were all asexual people, you know, who were all going out and writing theory about themselves. And one thing that is very strange to me is that autistic people, we aren't doing that, or at least it's not. It's so invisible that I haven't noticed. I haven't even been noticing it. So yeah. So I don't know. This is maybe a way we could do it. I don't know. This is me talking about my own experience and looking at Man of Steel through the lens of my autistic identity and stuff. So I hoped you liked it. This is the end, I guess. Thank you for watching. I've been, you know, doing a bunch of 4K remasters on my computer. I'm not gonna do those anymore. I've got a bunch more original stuff planned. I want to do a video on Brave and Mulan and why one of their arranged marriage storylines annoys me a lot more than other arranged marriage storylines. So that'll probably be out somewhat in the future. I also have a video that is much kind of bigger in scope. Probably going to be longer, about just like personal responsibility in terms of miscommunication, like who is responsible for miscommunication. And that, like, I started thinking about that, and then I realized this is a very deep rabbit hole with a lot of other interconnected things I want to talk about, including the alt-right and issues of, philosophical issues of truth and communication theory and studies and all that. So that'll probably be out at some point in the future. And then obviously I'm going to keep the analytical Let's Plays coming. So, yeah. So if you like this video, give it a like. If you have something to say, let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear your stories. Especially if you know about, I would love to hear that there actually is a wide work of autistic and neurodivergent theory out there. So, if you know of any, let me know in the comments. Subscribe and ring the bell if you want to be notified when I make those videos that I talked about making and might make, although I don't like making promises I'm not necessarily going to keep. Anyway, if you have videos that you want me to make, let me know in the comments. It's very good motivator. There should be some more stuff on screen now or in a bit. I don't know how much longer this video is going to go on for, but there's going to be some more stuff in the future. And some of the stuff I already made will be on screen. So yeah. I guess that's it, esteemed viewers. I've been Jekyllstein Gray. Couldn't see the Modern Prometheus sweatshirt I got for Christmas for most of my videos. Sorry about that. I'll see you in another video. Bye bye.